Good afternoon, everybody. Everyone well? I think this is probably quite a good slot, right? Because it's just in between, in the middle. Hopefully the coffee's kicking in, concentration level's okay. So when you're about to give a VMware presentation, thanks, and Joe Bagley's presented in the morning, you can take some comfort as a brummie that you're not going to be talking crap when most of your presentation generally agrees with him. So I'm feeling okay. So to introduce myself, I'm Mark Shaw. I work for DellEMc. I cover the UK, the VMware business in the UK from a technical perspective. So kind of most of my time is spent out for the customers talking about VMware technologies. Today I'll be covering Hyperconverged with a focus around vSAN. So another thing I took away from, so you always learn something new when Joe talks, but another thing I took away was that I am that user. I recently rejoined Dell, so I've been back in Dell about 7 months. I was 2 years in a cloud storage startup, and then I was Dell before that as an enterprise technologist in the storage business. But all of that time, I fundamentally just want to get on with my job, and sometimes the tools that IT give me aren't right. So maybe I sometimes use my iPhone to connect to my work laptop to connect to some services that are blocked on the LAN. And that's kind of the important point that we're making, that we're all users, and sometimes we get frustrated with the tools that we want to deliver. Now, I thought about, there's a lot of the big buzzwords, as Joe said, around digital transformation, all that type of stuff. But the kind of the core part of this presentation is 20 minutes. The first part, I really want to talk about more of the infrastructure layer, real-world conversations I'm having with my customers, right? Because we all know there's these things coming, but most of our time, still, unfortunately, I spend keeping the lights on, dealing with engineering, what my boss used to call the frigging and the rigging, right? That's what we're dealing with. But we all know we need to get somewhere. And when I was an IT manager and a customer and I was looking at a new infrastructure refresh, I was typically here on the left-hand side, right, traditional infrastructure. It was quite good. I got to talk about speeds and feeds. It was a competitive situation. But fundamentally, I knew which stack I was purchasing, right? I knew what type of architecture I was going to buy. But that world's changed, right? It's complex because that's still true and still holds true for many customers, right? It's still the right thing to do. But fundamentally, there's other things. Hyperconverged, software-defined, which I'm going to talk about today. The overarching idea of what public cloud means for us, SaaS applications. It drives complexity. So there's a couple of points really I want to make. Is Dell EMC has always been a very open company, right? We've got lots of things in our kit bag and lots of ways we can help you. We always want to make sure that you put you first and position you in that place. But secondly, as being an IT manager in the past, it's always difficult to know how I'm going to hang what the infrastructure or hardware I'm purchasing. I'm making a big decision for my organization. I'm hanging my hat on that technology for the next 5 years, right? So I want to know what I'm doing is right for my business and right to take me to that next phase of my development in IT, and whatever that may be, right? We're all in different points of the stage. So the point of this slide really is that there's lots of choice. That is difficult, but is now a time for you to make a change in your infrastructure to take you to that next stage? And Hyperconverged kind of certainly helps with that. Now again, kind of covers what Joe spoke about a little bit earlier, right? And I've had this slide in kind of many iterations for a while, and it's the 80-20 rule. And the best analogy I can give here is I was with an insurance company a couple of weeks ago, and it was a very infrastructure-led conversation, and I was there to talk about VMware, and I started mentioning words like cloud and automation, and kind of the infrastructure guy I said, no, Mark, we've got our infrastructure. Why does it need to change? We like it the way it is. And I sat there and thought, I'm going to have the relevance, IT, the world's changing. And unfortunately, the CIO interrupted me and said, well, no, because we're not the tail that's wagging the organization's dog anymore, right? We used to do IT for IT's sake, the 80%. We used to implement email and WANs and virtualization. We were adding value to the business, but it was IT stuff, where the user sits in the 20%, the marketing department that has bigger IT budget sits in that 20%. And she said, well, they're the ones that are driving us now, and we need to be in a place where we can deliver those services. Because otherwise, like Noddy Mark, the user, is going to go and use Dropbox, or going to go and purchase a marketing application that doesn't run on our infrastructure and have all of that control and goodness that we in IT should deliver. So that's kind of what I mean by this slide. Again, this is back to my, so everyone's, it's a hybrid cloud future. Joe kind of agreed to it. It's kind of the truth because it has to be. The system of record applications are probably always going to be online. Moving legacy applications to the cloud is typically not possible. One of my biggest cloud-first customers has moved 10% of their workloads in 2 years to the cloud, and they're cloud-first, right? But depending no matter where you are on that transition to cloud, if you're going that way, or it's going to be 100% on-premise, if I'm hanging my hat on an architecture or a bit of infrastructure technology moving forward, do I want to have the comfort that it is hybrid cloud ready, even if I'm just operating a normal on-premise infrastructure platform? Okay, so that's kind of my point of this slide. Make sense? Just check how I'm doing with time. And now, again, lots of versions of this slide, right? There's, I've seen a picture of a Hyundai, I've seen a picture of a Golf, I've seen a picture of a taxi, whatever. I've got the constituent parts here, but what we've been doing in IT, that 80% is engineering work. And you've got to ask yourself as a company, how much do I want to be focused in IT in engineering, the frigging and the rigging again, cables and so on and so forth, and how much do I want to be looking forward? So another good analogy of this one, in terms of bringing it back down to kind of the traditional IT view, is I was at a large investment bank. Spent 2 years looking at AWS and decided to come back to on-premise infrastructure. And they've gone a virtual SAN by VMware, by the way. And we were talking about automation and cloud, and do you want to have that look and feel of an internal cloud internally? And the organization said, yes, absolutely, but not today. And his actual actions were, I want to spend less time looking at my infrastructure and looking at my cables and my racks, and spend more time looking at my customers, my end users. And he realized he couldn't get there, but he knew he had to get there over a period of time. Okay, so, the question is always around, how do you get to that place where you can help with innovation in your business, or help make the user sell to your user, or give your user the service they require, to make sure IT still own all of that application stack for good reason, security, compliance, control, governance, all those type of things. So these are just some quick questions I'll blast through that I see when I talk to CIOs, they come and speak to me about. And a very important one is around, is it compelling to own? I mean, is it compelling to own from an infrastructure layer? So, we used to talk about, you can have fast and you can have good, or you can have reliable, but those two things all wasn't intertwined. Now, the reason that people have gone to a cloud service like AWS isn't necessarily a CIO-driven conversation. It's normally driven by someone outside of IT or shadow IT because they didn't get the service from IT. It's not been about cost, because we certainly know that cost isn't cheaper to go to cloud, but it's certainly about agility, performance, speed, look and feel, getting to that time to value very quickly. What these hybrid cloud platforms should be able to deliver, or want to be able to deliver, is the ability to make it completely compelling to own. Those three things I kind of talk about when I talk to customers about this. One is we need to match and deliver that cloud-like experience, the idea of going to a credit card, getting a VM, getting a network, getting some storage, and away I go. The ability to operate at the speed of continuous integration, all that new stuff that's coming. But fundamentally, do what we've done right for so long, the other two parts of that triangle, if you like, to make it compelling to own, which is delivering security, compliance, who owns my data, where and when. And what we've also become very good at in IT, which is managing the cost model of that infrastructure. We know how much it's going to cost. We know how predictability is. We know what our CapEx looks like, what our OpEx looks like. So what if we can make that service look compelling to own? Look, Joe covered this off. Where do you want to put your apps? How do you want to deliver apps? What type of apps do your users need? Are they user-centric? Are they new? Are they old? Are they a mix? Can I guarantee the security outside my data center? I want to have an independent cloud strategy. I want to be open moving forward. I want to manage those devices that I need. These are all questions. How quick can I get to business? Time to value. Risk mitigation, and those are the two important ones. But all these questions are what CIOs are asking me. And I guess the one that I see on every single CIO's top 10 list, on most organizations' top 10 list, is state-of-the-art compliance and risk mitigation, right? Everyone knows hopefully what the GDPR rules were, the big breach a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago that we all know about in a banking organization. If the GDPR rules were in place today, that would have cost that organization $1.9 billion in a fine. $1.9 billion in a fine. That really affects business's bottom line, right? That's why security and compliance is very important. How do we deliver that as an organization? Hopefully everybody is with me on that stuff. So that's kind of the challenges I see. And I'm going to bring it kind of back down to where we see hyperconvergence fit into that place, and a little bit about virtual SAN. So hopefully most of you know what hyperconverged is, but we have the idea of a traditional infrastructure. Still very, very personal. It's still a bigger part of the market. It's still where most people sit. That's discrete servers, discrete storage, discrete networking. Tends to be engineered by you, the customer, right? You spend to do some of that integration work. You update it as separate stacks. Typically, there's some stuff we do there around engineer system, but that's where we're at. There is, of course, the idea of discrete software-defined, the promised land of software-defined storage, if you like. Run our software on any hardware, Mr. Customer. Good luck to you. Then sitting in the middle here is kind of when we talk about hyperconverged. We could also talk about engineered systems, but hyperconverged today is where a lot of that hardware layer, infrastructure layer, is consolidated down onto a single standard-based x86 server platform. So in DellEMc world, that's PowerEdge. So we're also, on those standard x86 servers, we're consolidating the management interface for all of those services into vCenter in vSAN world. We're consolidating storage down into those directly attached within inside the x86 servers. But typically, we're making that more of an engineered, supportable solution to remove some of that, I'm going to say it again, I'm sorry, frigging and rigging work that you need to do, right? So you have a single hardware platform that's heavily invested in, lots of R&D, hardware is certainly not dead, right? There's lots of stuff happening in the x86 world for this type of stuff, but it all sits within inside the hypervisor within one single scalable platform. Make sense? So, VMware has an implementation of virtual SAN. That implementation is within inside the ESXi kernel, so a little bit technical, hopefully that's okay. So it's within inside the ESX kernel. If you've had 5.5 of ESX installed, you have vSAN installed. It needs to be licensed. So vSAN is a scalable storage platform based on direct attached storage with inside the ESXi hosts you have. We take that storage, combine it into one single data store that's presented to my VMs, all managed within inside vCenter. So it's a very VMware-centric, vCenter-centric, simple-to-use storage platform. So all of the services you'd expect from an external storage array are now software-based within the ESXi native hypervisor. Make sense? Kind of fully integrated with all the VMware goodness that you kind of know and love, right? So HA, DRS, replication, snapshots, all that type of stuff, completely native within inside VMware Virtual SAN. So VMware's hyper-converged, software-defined offering. So I guess just a very quick slide on how it scales, right? So vSAN can start very small. 3 nodes is the minimum. There is a 2-node robo offering, but 3-node is the minimum. And we can scale that platform out in a very simple fashion, right? We can add another node, just like we do today for compute resources. We add more CPU, we add more memory. But the same thing now holds true that when we add another node, we also add more capacity and more performance from a storage perspective. So again, kind of think of the hyperconverged model a bit like the web scalers. They don't have discrete storage and network servers. They want to, if one component fails, they take it out and replace it with another one. It's the same concept. Also makes capacity planning pretty easy. And we'll cover off, there's 2 flavors of how we implement vSAN, but when it's server-based, more software-defined, if you like, on a product called Ready Nodes, we can scale individual nodes up by adding more capacity in those nodes if we have available slots. We can also scale those nodes up by adding more performance. So it's kind of a standards-based x86 server platform that scales up and scales out. It is pretty scalable. Those are pretty big numbers. Those are the 6.2 scalability numbers of vSphere. So vSAN will match the next iteration. I mean, on that, Dell and DellEMc and VMware's biggest customer in the UK is a media company. They have about 320 nodes of vSAN driving some of their streaming business in the UK. So very scalable. And again, for those of you who are aware and probably know vSAN for quite some time, for a long time it has been used in VDI or Robo, and that's still true. But we're seeing most of the growth and most of the time we're implementing vSAN on, I'm just seeing Barry's walking over to, so I'm running out of time, but he's walked off. On business applications, your normal VMware workloads sit on virtual SAN the same way as they would today. So it's absolutely there and it's absolutely in prime time. So just quickly, there's a normal slide I present here, which is kind of the build versus buy paradigm, right? So the frigging and the rigging is kind of the do-it-yourself side, all the way up to kind of the what was VCE within the Dell family, which is now called CPSD. Interesting acronym, but it's called CPSD, where they have the idea of big rack scale, heavily engineered solutions, heavily tested, updated in one go, very guaranteed kind of outcome workloads. We also have kind of engineered solutions where it's kind of moving back down the buy versus build paradigm where we're still validating and engineering those solutions for you, but it's kind of less rigid, and more open. Of course, there's appliances where VxRail sits, where they're, again, heavily engineered, validated solutions, single appliance, type of knife, and away you go. And of course, we've mentioned the do-it-yourself approach, standard servers with software. And again, kind of where there's a solution, we're open that fits on that buy versus build scale. It's kind of up to you and how we engage with you as a customer. And Virtual SAN sits in that kind of same part. There is a BYO offering. You can take the HCL from VMware, absolutely use the HCL from VMware. It's very important. We're putting a bit more load on the drives, and you can take your software, run it on that server, and run vSAN. The recommended approach from VMware is twofold. One, there's either the VxRail appliance, which is, again, a fully baked engineered appliance from what was VCE. It has some additional features and functionality, which I'll cover off, but it's a kind of fixed appliance that you scale an appliance at a time. The other option is something called Ready Nodes. Ready Nodes are still a standards-based server. It's a PowerEdge server, which I'll cover off. But they're slightly more, they're validated end-to-end to run vSAN. We guarantee that all the components are tested together and sit on the HCL. And fundamentally, we support that server as a Ready Node appliance for firmware updates, releases, support, etc. moving forward. So very much heavily recommended to go down the appliance or the Ready Node side of things. So just quickly, picture of hardware. Yes, I work for DellEMc. We like servers. There's some out the back there. I'm glad to talk it out. So these are the Dell PowerEdge Ready Node options. So if you don't, does anyone know what the FX2 is? Has everyone seen an FX2? So it's a converged server platform. It's 2U, highly flexible in terms of what you can implement. You know, on the left-hand side there, you have 4 2-socket servers and 2 storage sleds. It might be that you have 4 half-width servers in that 2U chassis, or 1 larger server with 2 storage sleds. So a very modular mini blade chassis, for want of a better term, with networking in the back, that can configure in numerous ways. Makes a lot of sense for vSAN Ready Nodes. We also have traditional kind of Ready Nodes, R730 and 730 XDs. Again, you can see some of those out the back. Go and speak to the DellEMc guys. And then a couple of slides on VxRail. So VxRail is taking the Dell PowerEdge server platform. These are now based on the Dell PowerEdge server platform. What we've done is taken vSAN as a core offering of software. You're still using vSphere as your main management interface, but around that, we've wrapped some additional bits of technology. One is around lifecycle management of the hardware and the software, so updating firmware, those sort of things. There's some additional tools from DellEMc around cloud management, moving data to the cloud, additional replication technologies. But again, this is an appliance approach, multiple models in that appliance approach to meet most use cases. So again, BYO is one option. vSAN Ready Node is an open standard-based hardware based on standard PowerEdge servers, but slightly more flexible in terms of how you approach it, but supported by DellEMc as a virtual SAN Ready Node. And of course, then there is the VxRail portfolio. Last few slides. I think I'm doing okay. I can talk fast, but I'm a brummie, so I apologize. Hopefully I'm getting there. So, you know, virtual SAN has been out in the market for quite some time, and it's had an interesting ride. 6.2 was released in March this year. And from March this year, we've just seen a rapid growth. And I think those people that love VMware were waiting for this to happen. VMware must have known, and the stars aligned. And in 2016 is kind of the year of hyperconverged anyway. 6.2 became prime ready, and the growth has been phenomenal. So 1,500 customers at the beginning of the year. It's over 5,500 customers today, which kind of just shows the maturity of the product, and the market's kind of ready for it. This is part of the process. Been a whole list of features that have been released by VMware over that time. And again, 6.2 brought some key ones: dedupe compression, RAID 5 and RAID 6, some end-to-end checksumming for the kind of storage geeks to make sure that the data integrity sits there. But it's been a long history, lots of updates. It's ESXi native, so you get the updates along with vSphere. So, you know, and the point I always make there actually just is that, you know, I think ESXi is one of the most mature, stable kernels there is out there. vSAN has been implemented in that kernel. Kind of again shows the maturity and reliability of the vSAN kernel. 6.5 was released along with vSphere 6.5. Joe covered that off briefly earlier, and there's been some key releases there. So outside of the dedripping compression and all that stuff that came with 6.2, you can now present vSAN storage externally via iSCSI to standalone non-virtualized workloads, which has been kind of a big ask. Lots of stuff around cloud native and API integration. Small implementation of the ability to do vSAN with 2 nodes and a direct connect for internet connectivity. So very small sites, remote sites, that type of thing. That's it. That's the end of my presentation. Again, the point really is there that obviously hyperconverged is a different choice. It's a different option. It's one of the many choices you now face as customers, not just going to buy that traditional type storage platform. But I think it offers a chance for you, if you're in a position where you can leverage something like hyperconverged, to make that change in your infrastructure. So hopefully you can take a step change from spending 90, 80, 70% of your time frigging in the rigging, keeping the lights on, just reducing that number, facing externally, and go towards that path of next generation architectures or cloud native and all those kind of stuff, the buzzwords that Joe kind of spoke about earlier. We're at the back. Come and give me a shout if you need anything. Thank you.